do the best you can, but there was a broad outreach process for developing what elements people wanted in the park, and then where, geographically, would they be distributed in the park. For example, we created at each of the entrances the equivalent of a small neighborhood park, in the sense that we have at Atlantic Avenue, and we have at the end of Old Fulton Street, and we already have in Dumbo through the city park there, playgrounds. Everybody knows that if you're pushing kids or carrying them, they have little legs, they're heavy. Most of us are going to walk fairly far from our houses to get into the park because of the nature of its geography. You want to have that amenity and lawn right near each of the entrances. And so there were a series of things that we did like that that understood the importance of the entrances into the park for serving the kind of immediate, and people with little children often go to playgrounds many times during the week. They're not like the occasional once or twice a month user. And then some of the activities that New Yorkers will travel longer distances for are in the middle of the site, and that's where someday the marina will be, or years to come, and the recreational Pier on 2 and Pier 5 as the sports fields pier. In New York, people will travel, and of course they're not little children at that point in time either. They have bicycles and can be dropped off and take a taxi. And so those are the things that are grouped more in the middle of the park. Next. So this is an aerial photograph that was taken in 2007, and the next drawing is a superimposition over the aerial of the build-out of the park. And I think everybody knows where we are, but just in case anybody's a little bit confused, this is the Brooklyn Bridge here, and this is the old Fulton Street entrance where you would go by Barge Music, which is right there. Atlantic Avenue comes down on the slip between 6 and 7, actually. The Atlantic Avenue is centered on the void between them, and we've created a curved entrance that brings you directly into the park at that point in time. Next. So the park land itself is 65 acres. And just in comparison, I don't know, who knows the acreage at Prospect Park? Anybody? Between 500 and 600 acres? Is that what somebody's saying? 585 acres. That sounds about right to me, but if it's wrong, you're going to hell. But Central Park is about 900 acres. Many of you have been on the promenade and looked down, and some of you, have been able to see what's going on. I've taken a lot of tours, and Regina takes like so many tours a week of people going in there. What's the first thing they say? This is so much bigger than I thought it was going to be. And partly, everything around Brooklyn Bridge Park is huge. The East River, the BQE, the bridge itself, Manhattan. But the biggest thing of all is the 800 acres of water. I think that's in a later image, Adrian. The park is 65 acres, but it is really almost experientially in its scale the size of Central Park, and more so in a way because Olmsted and Vaughn so intricately created Central Park in a way that it feels big, but you never see the whole thing unless you're in a tall building in one side or something. Here, in fact, when you stand on Pier 1 or 6 or any place, you're on 65 acres of land, but you're next to 800 open acres of water, and it's just spectacular, and I can't wait for you all to be there and making it part of your everyday life. So just a little bit about what's coming when. This is the piece that's outlined in yellow is what we're building, and I almost want to say they're building right now because there's so many people doing it. But this piece is being completed, and then we're building the upland playground. and the beginning of Pier 6, which will include a cafe shed and about 2 acres of really exciting playgrounds and 3 volleyball courts, which aren't quite ready to be open, but that will all be first. And then the next thing that will happen is that the state park, as it's currently called, will be built starting immediately this spring. And then starting in the winter of 2011, we will be building Pier 5 and a little bit of the beginning of the upland, which we call a picnic pier, which has tons of tables and grills and those sorts of things. And then there is funding for additional phases, but that's where I'm going to stop tonight. So Adrian, if you will. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the design moves that are in the park. I think some of you have heard some of this before, but Pier 1 has 2 important organizational lawns in it, and they each have very specific things that they try to connect to, and they're quite opposite, really. The first is a big oval-shaped lawn that is on an incline, and it has a kind of virtual axial line to the base of the Brooklyn Bridge on the Brooklyn side. And so that lawn, when you're sitting on it, you're looking right at this magnificent piece of infrastructural architecture. And so that is a rather specific view. That is a bounded view. And it's a view that basically says, sit here and let the majesty of that structure inform the scenery of what you see. The Harborview lawn is kind of the opposite, in a way. It is, in fact, axially on line with the Statue of Liberty. Not a bad thing out there in the water. But it is all about reaching out to that 800 acres and creating a place, because this is something that I think we all find living in the city, and that's why I think people like the promenade so much. You go up there and you're like, oh my gosh, this is inspiring and beautiful, and even though the day was not so great, the sun's going down and the beautiful Staten Island ferry orange is on that blue water, and it's an amazing thing. And this is a version of that, but where you actually get to sit on the lawn, and the edges of these spaces, there are little trees now, and they're actually quite little. There aren't many that are bigger around than my wrist, but they will grow. They're planted in fantastic soil, very carefully engineered soil, and they have irrigation, water that's collected on the site from rainwater. So we're yielding about 85% of the water that we'll use for irrigation from collected water on the site. Maybe in the beginning of the construction, you guys go ahead. I think we have pictures later on. But this is the Bridgeview lawn, which is in what is now the state park. But it gives you a sense of how easy it is to create these spaces that use the majesty of the circumstances around the context of the park setting to make certain kinds of spaces. And one of the things that's exciting, of course, is that this fantastic restored carousel will be going into the park as part of the realization of this piece. A rendering of what might be a seasonal skating event under the bridge. Go ahead. And I debated putting this in because I figured there would be some hissing. But Nate said, it's down, it's over, put it in there.